Okay, so very quickly going to go over the jungle in this video. I want to um, first remind you about surrealism. I had hoped to get to this when I was talking about Kahlo. Remember, Kahlo was kind of co-opted by Andre Breton as being part of the surrealist family group movement. She objected to that, and yet I think it's fair to put her in there over her objections because she does fit, even though she doesn't believe that she's kind of painting a dream world. She's really painting just her reality. So we recall surrealism from our study of Merritt Oppenheim's Object. And as we remember, when we're talking about surrealism, we're talking about kind of a dream world, images that sometimes basically are focused on bypassing reality and reason and rationality. We can see how some of that, the groundwork was laid for that in things like symbolism. And expressionism when it comes to Van Gogh. So the emotional, more spiritual or psychological aspect, right? That was emphasized in those movements really takes hold here, in part because of the influence of Freud, right? Remember Freud, the interpretation of dreams and the unconscious, right? Much of the time with surrealistic work, we have images that are just kind of outrageous and, not entirely comprehensible. Surrealism encompasses a wide range of works. There are works that are both surrealist and also fall into kind of other movements as well. We'll see that with the Diego Rivera piece. So they don't all look alike. Nature tends to be a very common subject in surrealism, but it doesn't necessarily have to appear in every surrealistic work. But in this work, that we're looking at next, it certainly does. This is called The Jungle. It's by Wilfredo Lamb. And so what I like about it, as I've mentioned before, is that I like when I can kind of really get something out of a work without knowing any historical background. So let's just look at it first. So I would suggest that you take some moments and really look at it and see what you can see, because I'm pretty sure that if you're just glancing at it very quickly, you're not going to see much. But if you look very closely, of course, we see legs, we see faces, breasts, but along with growth of vegetation, which is going to turn out to be sugar cane. So what I emphasize is that you want to spend some time how you would go about describing these bodies. What words would you use that help to create a visual picture in describing these bodies? And have we studied any other works that remind you of what you're seeing? And here you should be thinking of specifically African masks. This is made of gouache on paper, and then it's mounted on canvas. Gouache is a kind of a watercolor, kind of like a thicker watercolor. So it's first painted on paper and then mounted on a canvas, which is something we have not seen before in any of our other works. So Wilfredo Lamb, was Cuban, of Afro-Cuban, but also Chinese descent, but mostly identified with his Afro-Cuban descent. He actually spent time in Paris working with and studying, or not studying, but working with the surrealists. And his intent with this particular work is to focus on the slavery and the aftermath of slavery and colonialism in Cuba. We'll see some works here. We see, as I've already noticed, the suggestion of the masks. The difference here about the kind of the use of the images that suggest the masks than what we saw with Picasso is that Lamb is actually coming back from a background where he has actual familiarity with some masks, right? And so his use of the masks here, or the images that are like the masks, is going to be somewhat different than Picasso's use, I would say, because he's actually referring to the historical existence of these masks as well, whereas Picasso was really just using the masks because they looked different and interesting to him, not because he had any particular knowledge of their background and their cultural contexts. So We can clearly see the influence of Cubism here. I'm not going to read all this because I'm going to give you this presentation so you can read it yourself, but I want to emphasize that both Surrealism and Cubism influences here. So this is just another example of how something can be both surrealist and something else at the same time. He, after his study with the surrealists, he would return to Cuba and painted the jungle. Was one of the things that he painted there. Make sure that you're focusing in on his emphasis on his identity as an Afro-Cuban. This Khan Academy article has some really good information about the context in Cuba, the context in which he was creating, in which he was painting. So make sure that you read the article again for the focus on context. In terms of, a description, the form and the content, you can see everything yourself here and make good judgments and descriptions here. It's obviously it's both bright and dark at the same time, kind of like a jungle in some ways, bright in terms of some of the vegetation, but dark in terms of the density. The sugarcane reference, of course, is going to refer to these are the sugar canes, right? Sugarcane, refer to the sugarcane growth in Cuba, but also is going to refer to the history of slave labor in the harvesting of sugarcane. So make sure that you read the Khan Academy article about this work as well. It's very interesting. Thank you.